Tony Blair, more revelations from the Blair files today, he wanted to move Wimbledon Football Club to Belfast in the late 1990s, hoping it would be a unifying force in the divided city.
Yeah, there was talk of a 40,000-seater stadium being built, as well as a sporting academy, if the South West London side moved to the province and changed its name to Belfast United. Joining us now is the sports broadcaster Ben Jacobs. Good morning to you, Ben. What did you make of this then, when this emerged from the Blair files?
Yes, good morning. Well, it's interesting because people will equate it to the move to Milton Keynes, but that came years later. So we're actually talking about the late 90s compared to the early 2000s. And from Tony Blair's point of view, as you say, he felt this would be a unifying force. But it, of course, treats a club that were looking for investment and the need for a new home as a commodity, more like a franchise that can be plucked from London, despite its fan base, and a fervent fan base, of course, and moved to a completely different place. So the sort of upside at the time for Blair was that it would be seen as a PR win, a political win, and there was talk also of building a new 40,000-seater multi-purpose stadium that could have been used for a variety of things. But there was opposition from these formative talks as well from the Northern Ireland football authorities, and many at the time felt that it was a bit of a PR stunt because, of course, to the football sentimentalist, you can't just take one team, one name, one fan base and transplant it somewhere else. In American sport, we've seen it done, but it's a lot harder to actually succeed with this kind of idea in English football. But even when Wimbledon went to Milton Keynes, which was 50-odd miles away, there were still empty stadiums and there was still widespread opposition.
Yeah, I just don't know how they thought the fans from South London would be going to games in Belfast. It beggars belief. But Eamon Holmes, actually, of this parish, he supported it at the time. He was trying to rally community support. But can I just ask you something separately, Ben? Arsenal lost to West Ham last night off the back of quite an egregious, some would say, VAR decision where the ball apparently went out, but the goal was allowed to stand. Why haven't we got the technology in this day and age, in what is meant to be the biggest and best and most lucrative football league in the world, to see whether a football has crossed the line or not?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. We had this with the Newcastle-Arsenal game as well, so Arsenal will feel quite aggrieved. The first thing I'd say is that VAR will get a lot of blame for this because the cameras are not in place to give you the vantage point to see the overheads, which is the only way really of definitively telling whether the ball has gone in or out. But VAR in this context are there to ultimately only overrule that kind of decision if there's a clear and obvious error. So if the on-field decision is the ball is in, then it's very difficult for VAR to intervene. And the other thing is that the ball is spherical, so a lot of the angles that we see are not reflective of the reality when you look at the overhead. So people might be quite surprised when the ball looks out. It could actually still be in, which again prevents a problem for VAR. So I agree with your broader point that we need to find a way of the technology of the cameras being in place to tell definitively. Yeah. But if we can't tell definitively and it's given as in, then VAR's job is not to overrule and say it's out because they don't have the technology to be sure.
Great stuff. Sports broadcaster Ben Jacobs, thank you for your time.